Good morning and welcome to the Daily Post on the 15th of December. We hope that the scriptures and thoughts and ideas will help and uplift you through this day. We begin with the scripture from Psalm 16 and verse 1. Preserve me, O God, for in thee do I put my trust. If you're reading the Bible in a year, today we've got a slightly larger amount of reading. Joel chapters 2 and 3, and Amos chapters 1, 2 and 3, and Revelation chapter 6. Thoughts of the day. Failure will never overtake me if my determination to succeed is strong enough. The chief lesson I have learned in a long life is that the only way to make a man trustworthy is to trust him. And the surest way to make him untrustworthy is to distrust him and show your distrust. Very wise words there. The weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. Motivational thought for the day. It is better to train 10 people than to do the work of 10 people, but it is harder. On this day, in 1612 on this day, German astronomer Simon Marius was the first to observe the Andromeda galaxy through a telescope. In 1711 on this day, plague breaks out in Copenhagen. In 1806, French troops commanded by Napoleon Bonaparte entered Warsaw in Poland. In 1859, on this day, G.R. Kirchhoff first described the chemical composition of the sun. And in 1939, the first commercial manufacture of nylon yarn was completed in Seaford, Delaware, in the USA on this day. In 1958, the last steam locomotive was made at Crewe in England on this day. Engine number 92250 was the 7,331st locomotive built since the works opened. 1961, former Nazi leader Adolf Eichmann was sentenced to death in Jerusalem. In 1965, American spacecraft Gemini 6 and Gemini 7 completed a rendezvous in space on this day. And in 2009, the Boeing 787 Dreamliner made its maiden flight. The personal story of the day: a word about words. Every word that we speak has an effect on others, and they also have an effect on us. When we speak evil, we not only reveal the sin in our own heart, as we're told in Luke chapter 6 and verse 45, we also reinforce that evil and allow it to grow. Jesus said, "It's not what goes into our mouth that defiles us, but what comes out." James put it another way: the tongue defiles the whole body. That's in chapter 3 and verse 6 of James. Our untamed tongue corrupts us. On the other hand, when we refuse to give expression to impure, unkind, ungodly thoughts, we begin to choke and strangle the natural elements that trouble our soul. That's why the wise man said in Proverbs 13:3 that we must guard our mouth. When we do that, we starve the evil that is gnawing insidiously at the root of our soul. Do we want to put an end to the evil that so easily arises within us? With God's help, we must learn to control our tongue. We may say, "I've tried to, but I have no power to subdue it." James agreed. No man can tame the tongue in James 3 and verse 8. But Jesus can, Ask him to keep watch over your mouth, Psalm 141 and verse 3, and hand the bridle of your tongue to him. Wise words. May take some doing though. The devotional thoughts of the day. The first, a few more failings revealed. The scriptures from Proverbs 10 verse 19, references from Job 15 verses 1 to 35. In the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that refraineth his lips is wise. The January 1997 issue of Money magazine published the results of a survey in which people were asked whether the Panama Canal or the Suez Canal was longer, and how sure they were of their answer. Among those who were 60% certain, half got the answer right. But among those who were 90% sure, less got the answer right. In this group, although people had a greater degree of confidence in their answer, fewer were actually correct. And to save you looking up, the Suez Canal is nearly twice as long as the Panama Canal. The survey results could have helped Eliphaz, whose speech begins round 2 of the debates between Job and his friends. Eliphaz was probably 100% certain of his response to Job, but he was actually mistaken on some key points. You may remember from Eliphaz's first speech that the essence of religion was that people got what they deserved. Suffering comes to sinners and rewards comes to the righteous. Eliphaz's second speech continues this theme. Even if Job were blameless at the outset of his suffering, his recent outbursts surely made him worthy of judgment now. Eliphaz has no way of reconciling Job's empty notions and hot east wind with the conduct of a wise man. Eliphaz believes that Job is dangerous because his questions seem to undermine the foundations of religion as Eliphaz understands it. That's Eliphaz's point in verses 7 to 16. He charges Job with presuming to be wiser than the ancients or with claiming to have some special wisdom. In verse 14, Eliphaz attacks Job's claim that his suffering is not the result of sin. In essence, he says, no one is righteous. We can readily agree with this statement, but we must reject Eliphaz's simple equation that all suffering is the result of sin. As Eliphaz continues in verses 17 to 35, he notes that the ancients make clear the fate of the wicked. His speech may include some specific references to Job's situation, such as the loss of riches in verse 29 and vitality in verse 33. In general, however, his views represent the retribution theology common in the ancient world, and these views can still be found in some circles today. Sadly, they often underlie spirit-filled people who misunderstand God's way in the church and its people. Again, plenty to think about in today's lesson there. The second thought, you are never alone. Scripture from Ruth 1 verses 3 and 5. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left, and her 2 sons. And Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them. And the woman was left of her 2 sons and her husband. A man took his elderly mother out to the cemetery to visit graves for Remembrance Day. After placing a bouquet of flowers on her husband's grave, she wandered among the other gravestones, noting the dates and ages of other family members who had died. Finally, she stopped. She looked her son in the eye, and with a wistful smile she asked, "What have I done to deserve all this overtime?" Wise thought. Perhaps Naomi felt the same way. She had left Israel with a husband and 2 sons. Now Only she was left alone, and yet she was not alone. God had brought into her life 2 compassionate daughters-in-law, one of whom would follow her all the way back to Israel. Even though Naomi intensely felt the loss of her loved ones, God had not deserted her. He provided, even in a foreign land, those who would love and care for a despairing widow. God never really leaves us alone. When we lose those whom we expect to love and support us, He always provides another way for this need to be met. While you may experience the pain of separation, you never need to feel totally abandoned. Sometimes God grants you an unmistakable sense of peace and comfort. Other times He uses people around you to be the instruments of His love and comfort. In other cases, His compassion never fails and His presence never falters. Let God fill your life with His presence, in whatever way He chooses, rejoicing that He never forgets nor forsakes. Be assured that even though there may be an empty place in your home, there can be a fullness in your heart. A few lighter moments for the day. My wife and I are inseparable. In fact, last week it took 2 house leaders and a pastor to separate us. A beggar walked up to a well-fed woman who was witnessing in the city square looking for a meal. And he said to her, "I haven't eaten anything in 4 days." She looked at him and said, "Goodness, I wish I had your willpower." Do you know the punishment for bigamy? You get 2 mothers-in-law. The last fight with my wife was my fault. She asked, "What's on the TV?" I said, "Dust." Facts of the day. A rat can last longer without water than a camel. And a typical laboratory mouse runs 2.5 miles per night on its treadmill. The closing thought. I am thankful for the huge pile of laundry to wash, for it means that I have clothes to wear. Thank you for joining us today. We hope that you've benefited from the scriptures and thoughts and the ideas, and we hope that you'll come back tomorrow morning. In the meantime, may the Lord bless your day. Bye for now.